Welcome to OWASP Vancouver's December and final edition of the year, featuring Jim Manico from Manicode Secure Coding Education. Jim's going to talk about the OWASP Top 10 2021. He is one of the co-authors of the OWASP Top 10 2021, the application security verification standard that I use almost on a daily basis. So thank you for that, Jim, and everybody else who's worked on it. The OWASP and the OWASP cheat sheet. Some of the you may know him already, and he's a legend in the application security industry. And of course, everyone's heard of the OWASP Top 10. It's a standard that many developers and application security folks and others use, and it's one of the most popular ones out there. And with that said, Jim, I'm going to pass it over to you. Thank you for presenting today. Much better.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Manico. I am super happy to be here. I appreciate all the effort that all of you put into application security, leading this chapter, participating in the chapter, participating in OWASP projects. I'm just really happy to be here to talk to you about the OWASP Top 10. I'm a really informal person. If you want to like pop your mic on and say hello or ask a question, I usually allow that when I teach in class. So I welcome any questions mid-talk. So what is the OWASP Top 10? Look, it's the de facto standard in the web security industry. I'm not saying that's a good thing, because the OWASP Top 10 is a great awareness list. It's great for a talk like this. It's great for us as application security professionals and developers to talk about this. It's not comprehensive or complete, right? But it's still important, don't get me wrong. And I say de facto because governments, I mean, one of the main Canadian cybersecurity initiatives talks about, we want everyone to be OWASP Top 10 compliant on websites. And I question that, because it's not meant to be comprehensive. The counterpoint is we got to start somewhere. So I know you got to start somewhere, but if you take a look at the actual page of the OWASP Top 10, here's me marking it up earlier. Let me erase that. Let's clean up my mess. There we go. So if you take a look at this is not just me trying to be disrespectful to anyone. This is what's actually in the OWASP Top 10 document in the introduction. It says, what's the use case? Awareness from training, secure code review. You're going to see the OWASP Top 10 is mostly a bare minimum, or occasionally something to use, or entry level for training. But yes, it provides awareness, but this is not meant to drive a government standard. This is not meant to drive a product standard, right? No, that's not right at all, Mark. Mark, that's unfair. He says lip service, right? That's Mark trolling me, and I welcome you to troll me, Mark. But Mark, you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong, Mark, but I'm telling you, you're wrong, because OWASP Top 10 is not lip service. Because the way the OWASP Top 10 was built, it was built from 4 project leaders, primarily Andrew Vanderstock, our executive director. It was also built from Torsten Giegler, who's been part of the project from the beginning, Neil Smithline from the beginning, Torsten Giegler from Germany, and Brian Glass, who's actually a data scientist. There's a call for data, and the first 8 items of the OWASP Top 10 are chosen from the call for data. And I know data science is not easy. There's a lot of messy data that was sent in terms of vulnerability data. It's not the most perfect analysis that you can get when it comes to application security, but it's something, it's reasonable. It was done transparently, and we do our best to be objective when picking the top 10. Now, the last 2 are just from the community vote, because data has its limits. We're not going to see everything just by looking at data analysis. We're going to miss things like server-side request forgery. The community outstandingly voted that as a high number. Scanners aren't that good at finding request forgery the last couple of years. It's a relatively new category. And logging and monitoring, I don't know anybody who had major problems because of just logging, right? No one got hacked because of logging. I used to actually say that for years, but now we know Log4Shell, that's not true, but I digress. But even though typically not doing logging properly doesn't lead to you getting hacked, it's still a super important category from a monitoring perspective. So I really believe in the OWASP Top 10. I think it's a reasonable document for the purpose it was written for, to provide awareness to the many people around the world who are still new at web security in the engineering fields, or developers coming out of school, or organizations that, they really haven't addressed security that much, and they're looking to bring some initial awareness to their developers. So who is that? That was Mark Cohen putting words in my mouth. Remember, Mark Cohen, he's putting words in my mouth that are not true. Don't listen to him. Dana Epp is awesome, right? So Dana Epp is saying top 10 considers around 50 security controls. ASVS has over 300, 130. So he's exactly right. When you want to do a standard, when you want to drive an entire security program off of a certain document, right? When you want to like help base a product and measure how complete it is from an assessment point of view, when you want to look at your penetration testing team, right? And see how thorough they are and what vulnerability classes they're looking at. When you want to help train your developers and teach them about security in a complete way, this is where the application security verification standard from OWASP, this is where that shines. It's more of a complete document. It's more of a complete document that's a standard that's trying to give you a large base of requirements to drive actual programs. Now, again, the OWASP Top 10 is still important because that's part of the main mission of OWASP, Mark, is to spread awareness. Our mission, one of the original mission of OWASP, I've said it 1,000 times. I used to run a podcast for OWASP. It says, OWASP, our mission is to make application security visible so that people and organizations can make informed decisions about application security risk. All materials are free, blah, blah, blah. But we're just trying to spread awareness to help people understand why these technical web security issues are so important for modern security. So I believe in this document. A lot of work went into it. A lot of eyeballs are put on this document. If we get it right as best we can, we have a chance to influence the world in a positive way. And that's the OWASP Top 10 at its best, I think, right? So A1 is access control. I love this. This is a great choice. Now, wait a second. Access control showed up in the early 70s. Salter and Schroeder, early white papers, principle of least privilege. 70s, big collars, flashy shirts and big hair, the 70s. This is when we first really started talking about access control in depth. And access control, we see 94% of apps have some kind of broken access control, and 34 of the common weakness enumeration categories all map to access control as well. This is why it's number one, because it's the biggest problem in information security in general. And I agree with that. Now, let me give you my perspective on it, Mr. Cohen. So, Mr. Cohen, when we look at access control from a scanning point of view, a turnkey scanner, whether it be a static analysis, dynamic analysis, or even an IAST scanner, if you want to, anyways. So they're not aware of your custom access control policies. They don't know if this report 7, Mark, they don't know if that report is for admins or managers or not. It's a business contextual issue. So number one, we can't really use automated scanning turnkey to find it. Now, Burp has some special plugins that you can configure with your access control policy. You can do unit testing. There's specialized scanning tools that you can configure with your policy to scan for access control, but you don't get it out of the box, Mark. And Mark, that's a terrible thing, right? It means the number one issue in web security, and yet at the same time, we're telling people, DevOps will save the world, and DevOps is all the answers, but DevOps, which is mostly automated scanning, Mark, is not going to find this so well. There's a lot of turnkey tools. The other thing, Mark, is that access control is kind of challenging to build. And what I mean by that is our frameworks are rarely going to give us detailed access control rules to handle things like horizontal access control. And Mr. Cohen, that's brutal because this shows up a lot. All I have to do is change that number and I can see a different message, right? And here's a basic query where I'm just looking at the message off the URL, that number. And check this out, Mark. So this is the message. And what I do for the recipient and the owner, Mark, I'm going to grab that user ID from the JSON web token or from the active session. So now I'm basically saying you got to be the recipient or sender at the data level where I'm literally building in horizontal access control at the query level. And here's the problem. There's a dozen different ways to do this. And there's an infinite number of special rules that you're going to have to deal with when you're building access control systems. So that's the double-edged sword here. My scanners don't help me, and dealing with complicated access control rules is something we often have to do by hand. So I would take, here's a few design principles I usually teach is like, you want to implement a standard way of doing data contextual access control that's contextual to your system. You want to enforce access control by an activity and not by a role. You want a centralized system with some kind of filtering so every request goes to your access controller. Some other principles I'd like to teach is, if things go wrong, fail securely. Use the right server-side data for access control policy. Make sure if I change your entitlements of a user, it takes effect right away, even if you're logged in. Good luck with that in a JOT system, different story. If your data model for access control should be well designed, and build admin screens first. If you're gonna build an access control system from scratch, hang on, I'll be right back here. If you're gonna build, this is PowerPoint, if you're gonna build an access control system from scratch, because you have these crazy enterprise access control features and the products aren't helping you, build your admin screens and metadata first. The rest will flow nice and easy. There's also some standards and requirements in the ASVS 4.03. Mr. Cohen, Mark, make sure you read this. I'm gonna look you up, Mark. I'm gonna find you and I'm gonna quiz you to make sure you've studied this properly. There's a 4.1 general access control design. There's operational access control, other access control considerations. Your homework, Mark, is I want you to give me a PR to help me fix the access control rules to make it better in some way, and I'll be watching you, Mark. So last but not least, it's hard to add access control late in the life cycle. Here's the authorization cheat sheet. Here's NIST 800-162, a U.S. National Institute of Standards, standard about access control. It's an American standard. Oh, this is for you, Mark. Oh, say, can you see? Okay, enough of that. You know why? Even though you're Canada, you don't want to hear the American national anthem. I apologize. But the deal is, it's a good standard in North America. You can hop down here and read some of the standards. It's good for you. It's a great standard and helps informs other standards around the world. I read standards from other countries as well to help learn. You can do the same, Canada. And here's the ASVS requirements as well. Mark, there you go, Mark. A1, access control in the bag. Let's talk about cryptographic failure now. So this used to be called sensitive data exposure, but it's been bumped up to, it's been changed because losing data is a root cause. The problem is, Mark, cryptographic failure of some kind. Rot 13 on all things. Vivek, who said that? Dana, give me 10 push-ups right now. Rot 13 on all things. 10 push-ups right now. Don't ever bring Rot 13 into my trade. Rot 13 is a character rotation. It's not even encryption. Push-ups. He's just trolling me. All you Canadians are trolling me. Number one, TLS everywhere. Check out SSLlabs.com. It's the main evaluation engine. There's also some German scripts. Test SSH from Dr. Vetta and OSAFT from the German OWASP team to do scanning of your TLS configuration on your private servers. So TLS everywhere in a well-configured way. Give me push-ups if you disagree. Key management, the hardest part about the key lifecycle is your key storage in a vault and doing key rotation. I usually say, yeah, use a secret management vault for keys. You do key management, but key management's brutally difficult. It's super difficult. So this is Dana schooling me about 15 minutes ago. I'm looking at this blog post that Cash App is using Amazon key management. They have one main key in their main, one main key in the vault that encrypts a service and data here, Jim. Look at how Azure does it, Jim. Azure uses like key references and it's out of the bag, turnkey, boom, good key management in the Azure.net world. That's a screen like right before we did this. This is a brand new slide we added. Dana, you are my key management hero. I just want you to know that. Seriously, I learned more about key management. We all got to learn. So key management's brutally hard. Cash App blog post that uses AWS. I think that's what I think of as best practice. And Dana was then pointing me to some of what Azure is doing, not using C#, when I'm using Java, beautiful, Android, C++, Objective-C, Go, or Python, I can use Google Tink, have direct integration into key vaults, and it is just a beautiful, easy solution to give to developers, in my opinion. In the C# world, a nice low-level library is libsodium, written by Dan Bernstein. You can use this as a low-level bunch of references, right? Transport layer cheat sheet, cryptographic storage links to more advanced discussions on key management. We also configuration on the public net. OSAF, that means Orange Juice Configuration project, a TLS verification project. And here's test SSL.sh. That's a fantastic, and how well their TLS is configured. Right on. Hey, Mark, are you still with me? Mr. Cohen, are you still with me, Mark? Say hi to me, Mark. Oh, there we go. Let's do this, Mark. How do you stop SQL injection? There's some SQL injection for you, Mark. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Raphael. If I wasn't using the cloud, thank you for pointing that link out to me as well. That's fantastic. If I was doing my own server architecture, Corp, they're one of the best of breed these days. There's a lot of good team management services out there. Cyber looking at a page of SQL injection, it's a terrible thing. Oh, say, can you? Nice other key is a great guidance for proper key rotation. I love it, Dana. Thank you. You rotate keys all day. I'm injecting on your apps. How do you fix this? This is terrible. Somebody help me out here. Somebody say input validation. Ralph? Maybe, Ralph. I can use HQL to access an ORM and have HQL injection if I don't do wait for it, Ralph. Wait for it, Mr. Cohen. Parameterized query is the answer. Even when you're talking to an ORM via HQL or OQL, you should parameterize your queries. Because Ralph, my friend, if you're going to do input validation, hey, Mark, Mr. Cohen, is this a valid email address? What do you think? So if we're doing just input validation to stop SQL injection, is this a valid email address? I agree, Dana. No, Vivek, with respect, seriously, Vivek, with respect, it's a valid email address from the original email RFC. It's a valid email address from the 2009 RFC. It's a valid email address from the HTML5 regular expression that's a willful violation of the standard for real email. And this regex in the HTML5 standard flat out allows me to use, there's a little apostrophe, there's an apostrophe, there's the @ symbol, there's the exclamation point, there's a dash. Where's that dash? Dash is right there. I got all the characters. And guess what, Vivek? You may not believe me that this is a valid email address because you're a smart man, you're an engineer, you want proof. You're like, Jim, I want proof. Dana, hang on. That's the regex defined in the HTML regular expression. Don't blame me for the bad regex. That's what browser vendors are recommended to implement when they implement HTML5 rendering engines. Not my fault, not my code, man. But I know that, you know what else? Hang on, wait a second, hang on. Vivek doesn't believe me. I respect Vivek because he's a smart engineer. He wants proof. This email address is live right now. It's one of my email addresses. You don't believe me it's a valid email address? Go ahead, email me. It's live. And I'll reply to all you Canadians. I don't care if it's the whole country. I'm going to reply with one word, believe. Believe it's a real email address. So if you use input validation to stop injection, you're going to get pwned. Here we go. There's my valid email address. Into that email address, select data from customers where email is Jim or one. That's an or. Yeah, or. One does not, that's true. You add or true to a query. Boom, I get the whole table. SQL injection with the valid legal email address. Don't feel bad. It's just how the world goes. Look at this. Look at the Slidle tide. Look at it. Even, sing it with me. Even valid data can cause injection. That's how we want to always parameterize your queries. That's the answer to this problem. Now, if you're writing PLSQL, all bets are off. It's a different story. You got to do a lot of validation and crazy mumbo jumbo in PLSQL. That's a different story. But for standard query access, we want to use parameterized queries, no string building, binding of variables in .NET. There it is. Boom.NET. There it is in Python. Python, you get one space wrong. It doesn't compile me. You're dead to me, Python. But this is how you do parameterized queries in Python. Sometimes you can't parameterize. That's right. You got to do really specific exact match validation. Sometimes when you can't validate certain data like a column or a table name, and if you're in PLSQL building administration scripts, that suddenly matters. You got to do really specialized validation. Here's some references like Bobby Tables and the query parameterization cheat sheet to stop SQL injection. They also merge cross-site scripting into the injection category. I could spend literally like 10 hours talking about this topic: output encoding, HTML sensitization, validate your URLs, sandboxing, content security policy, trusted types. It's crazy. I've given a lot of talks on this. Go Google Jim Manico or anyone else on XSS defense security. A lot of good talks on this. Let's move to A4, shall we, Mr. Cohen? Sometimes, yes, that's a legal email. You know why they allowed you to do that? Because that's a legal email address. That's why. Mr. Cohen, with all journeys, we can't just sit still. We got to move on. You know what I'm saying, Mark? So we're at A4. insecure design. Now, I usually talk trash about threat modeling because I've sat in so many threat modeling meetings where I just wanted to like jump out the window. I was so bored. So, I got to get, we have to move forward. I can't just sit in that office and I was traumatized sitting in like an 8-hour threat modeling meeting that was like a waste of 8 of my hours that I can never get back. And I was traumatized. And as part of that trauma, I was talking smack about threat modeling on Twitter for years. My name is Jim. I sometimes get a little abusive to threat modeling on Twitter. Hello, Jim. Thank you very much. I'm working through it. So it's reasonable, but have reference architectures in the first place from your architecture team, have secure patterns and principles and good requirements, and walk into threat modeling meetings with a plan to help conform the software you're modeling to the standards that your company endorses. I digress. I'm going to move on. I would look at Avi Duglin giving talks about threat modeling. I would look at who else? Tony Vadequez, who does the PASTA threat modeling methodology. He's fantastic, and plenty others out there who can talk about threat modeling for hours. That's not me. I'm moving on. That's a song, I bet. A5, security misconfiguration. This is a really critical category. I'd bump this up to like a number 2. I'd say number 1, log4shell, third-party libraries. Number 2 would be misconfiguration for me. 90% of apps have misconfiguration. We merge the XML attack category into security misconfiguration. Why? Why? Because all these XXE and XXEE problems are because of your misconfigured XML parser. A lot of the frameworks configure it properly by default, or you can configure it yourself, but it's been merged in this category. Now, security misconfiguration, I kind of don't like it. I mean, it's important, but it's kind of broad of a category. It can span anything from the password length to the file permission to Mark Cohen to access control and more. You got to read the manual for the framework, deployment environment, and everything in between. I usually look up hardening guides and get a consultant or an expert to vet that it's a good hardening guide and make that the standard of my group. They're all over the place. Hardening, this is for Jenga, ASP.NET, and there's a Spring, and there's some struts. Don't use struts. WordPress, Django, whatever. You can make anything secure if you keep an eye on it, configure it properly, minimize third-party plugins. Here's some guides to help you along the way. And for my TLS configuration, I got an A+, because people look at me and give me a hard time the moment I don't. I'm not trying to be all fancy here, but it's, I have a brochureware website. That's easy. But I use the Mozilla TLS configuration generator to help me give me a good base configuration for TLS for my server. So we really want good TLS configuration everywhere. There we go. And so when I want to do for my XML parser, I want to configure that to stop XXE or XEE, 2 different things. There's a nice cheat sheet that goes over those class attacks and how to configure your XML parser as a developer to avoid them. So verify. If you can't verify the config, it's not secure. You got to read the manual. And by the way, cloud configuration is especially problematic, right? Cloud configuration, this is why I think it's number 2, because you have one thing wrong in your Azure or Amazon setup, and you're going to pay for it. Usually a big impact when you have misconfigured cloud security at that level. So this is a really important topic, even though it's kind of an amorphous one. I love semgrep. Semgrep I like it because it's not as deep as other engines, but it runs in 30 to 60 seconds on big code bases. It's fast. So it's good for a check. It's good for DevOps type of life cycles. I usually run semgrep on a check-in and then a checkmarks or a Fortify or some other deeper engine once at night to run for hours. The SMTPRC refers to it, but slightly different. My email is valid. It's live right now. I want to pop up my email so badly. Is it going to pop up at the right screen? No, don't look at my email. Don't do it. Okay, there we go. That's better. Did anyone email me at this email yet? Does this work? Jeevan Singh wrote me email. There you go. You know what? No, not believe. You know what? Let's do it. Oh. Someone doesn't believe me. BEL. I'm so excited. That's why I'm just racing. I'm so excited. Yeah, believe. _. There you go. Bold it. Right back at you, baby. There you go. Let's get back to work here. Someone needed to be believing. Let's move on. Where are we? I'm in Northern California. I hear you're in Vancouver. But we're talking about the OWASP top 10. You might be lost. I'm a little lost right now. Let's get our bearings. We're talking about the OWASP top 10 right now. We've discussed broken access control with Mark. We discussed crypto failures with Mark. We discussed injection with Mark, insecure design with Mark, and Mr. Cohen and I all talked about security misconfiguration. We're going to look at AAA6 now, which is vulnerable and outdated components. So here we go. This was voted in by the community vote as number 2. It was also proven to be important by looking at the data straight up. So, and by the way, the data that says this should be in 6th place, the moment Log4Shell came out, if we could reanalyze this, all of our data with Log4Shell considered, A6 would immediately be the very first item, because Log4Shell, wait for it, is the greatest vulnerability of all time. The main defense right now is to update to your Log4j version 2.16. And if you just went and did a big, massive 2.15 patch, it's kind of unfortunate, but you really should probably upgrade to 2.16 in some situations. It's a merging, difficult problem, but third-party libraries, keep them up to date, be agile, so when there's a problem, you have a strong updatability factor, which people are testing right now anyways. So third-party library security, this is, I'm looking at WordPress at beginning of the year, had a critical vulnerability in an XML parsing issue that led to a massive vulnerability in WordPress Live early in the year. Same with Drupal. Drupal had a critical issue with the archive tar library that led to a major vulnerability in Drupal. So these are two of the biggest content management systems in the world with third-party library problems. Equifax went down to third-party libraries. The whole world is freaking the bleep out right now when like all the major media is talking about Log4Shell. This is gonna haunt us for years. So yeah, you really should continually scan your apps for third-party library issues, update them right away. I like Dependabot because it will issue a PR in real time as it notices I have an out-of-date library. And I think that the way we look at this topic like 2 weeks ago and the way we look at the topic today is very different. There's a lot of people talking about keeping your libraries up to date, being agile and have the updatability so you can continually keep your libraries up to date as these problems continue to proliferate, right? What typo? Yeah, I like SNY. Yeah, I like SNCC. Dana, they're really expensive, but I think they're one of the best vendors out there right now. I like JFrog is also pretty solid. I like Dependency Check as a good free baseline. There's also a lot of framework specific third-party management tools. There's stuff built into .NET Visual Studio for free for the .NET world. There's good scanning tools for Python that Dependency Check uses. There's retire.js for JavaScript. There's a lot out there in this space, and I don't think I need to sell it so much. We know how important this is now. So let's move on. A7, Mark Cohen, identification and authentication failure. Mark, this is a huge, ginormous topic. It's still an integral part of the OWASP top 10. It went from the 2nd place to the 7th place. Why are we saying that authentication is less severe an issue? It's because we have standard frameworks and we also have identity providers that were offloading the problem to other entities. I really don't want to build an authentication layer from scratch because I'd have to handle all these problems. If I have to do federation with like SAML or OpenID Connect, I got to do delegation with the OAuth 2 standard. I got cookies, I got tokens, I got credential recovery, password storage, crypto. There's a lot going on here. So the big question I get asked is, how strong should your login system be? And I'm going to look at this NIST standard. Oh, say, can you see? So there we go. NIST 863.3, the digital media guideline from the NIST, from the U.S. government and for U.S. companies. Yeah, this is one of the greatest standards to be written about identity. It breaks down authentication to 3 tiers, Mark, AL1, 2, and 3. I see a lot of other countries follow this as well. And if you have your own Canadian version of authentication standard, that's awesome. This is something to look at because for years I've been asked, how strong should your authentication be? And I gave an answer that was my best guess. And I usually use multi-factor, but I needed something to back that up. And then this standard came out and I can use it like a ball peen hammer to get people to do stronger authentication. Get stronger. I love it. AAL level 1, password. AAL level 2, that's multi-factor, SMS even. SMS is kind of weak. If you offer SMS multi-factor to be AAL level 2 compliant, NIST wants you to also have another stronger factor, like an app level multi-factor challenge to still be compliant, because SMS has got problems like SMS spoofing and similar. Anyways, AAL level 3 is like a hard token, like YubiKey or similar. And I look at the workflow here. Look at this workflow in the same standard right here. If the only risk we care about is losing sensitive data at a low risk level, right here, if sensitive data risk is low, then we should be at AAL level 2. Honestly, any kind of authentication that's password only is real for sensitive data is really a bad idea in 2021. I think we all agree on that. Let's just move on. What's a good idea for NIST also defines a new password policy that I think is kind of interesting. That's in SP 863B, because the standard is SP 863.3 part A, B, and C, 4 documents. The -3 overview document, and the A for registration and for provisioning users, B for authentication, and C for federation. Honestly, I'm not kidding around. If you're an identity architect, I think the standard's required reading, even though it's a little terse. It's really well written and informative. And they're suggesting a new set of rules for passwords, like don't limit any printable character, 8 characters or longer, but multi-factor anytime sensitive data is in play. That password limit is no big deal with multi-factor considered. Have a common password block list, a breach password block list, a couple context-specific words like don't use password or the username or the name of your business, throttle brute force. Don't use these special character rules anymore. Stop using hints or questions. I can look them up in your Facebook account, and no more mandatory password expiration every 3 months because it's useless. Only force password expiration if you have a big technology change or you're breached or something. This is a bad password. It's very common. It's 32,000th most common password according to Daniel Miessler's SecList list in GitHub. It is, what else? It's got the word password in it, and it's in breach lists. 3 reasons why this is a bad password. I don't like it. I'm scribbling, sorry. It's a problem. How should you store a password in your database if you have the sheer heroic desire to build your own authentication from scratch? Yeah, I would just, but a lot of people do. If you're a really big web scale company, you don't want to use an identity provider. That's too expensive. You got to build it yourself. You think Google's like, let's stop using Google Authenticator and all these 50,000 hours of login work we've done. Let's go use hash. Let's go use like Auth0. They're not going to do that. They've already invested like untold millions in their auth layer, as have many other companies. So we can wave the flag, use an identity provider, and admittedly, I agree with you, but that's not a realistic recommendation for a lot of companies. So here's my challenge to you, Mr. Cohen. How do I store a password in a database? So to the point where how can we straddle adoption of standards versus proprietary solutions? Mark, most of the identity, Mark Cohen, ask me a good question. I like your question, Mark. That's a thoughtful question. I would say use an identity provider that has significant configuration capabilities. And so, no, that's a good question, Mark. You're doing good, Mark. So Mr. Cohen, I don't want to call out vendors, but I'm gonna. Like Ping is a lot more expensive, but it's infinitely configurable for different policies, where Auth0 is on the other scale. It's a lot cheaper with less customization options. And I think an Okta's in the middle somewhere with good third-party integration. And these products evolve, and it may not be on top of it all. But the point is that you should audit the different solutions out there for your needs. Right? Auth0, a division of Okta, I know. There's Keycloak, there's many others out there. So you should make sure that your compliance requirements are going to match your IDP before you buy it. There are plenty out there with a lot of configuration options. So that's my answer, respectfully, Mark. How do you store a password in the database, damn it? That's a swear word, I'm sorry. I did drink before this, sorry. I forgot I was giving you a talk. Okay. No, salted hash is a bad idea. Nope. Dana, I strongly disagree. Do not do salted hashes. That's not the right advice, good developers. I submit with respect, Dana. Not trying to be too much of a jerk. There's only 4 good algorithms for password storage. The answer is Argon 2 ID. That's a password hashing algorithm. It does salting internally. You don't need to advise salts. That's already automatic. If you're not going to use Argon 2 ID, I'd use scrypt as my second choice. And if you want to be FIPS compliant, you want to use PBKDF2 with certain configuration options here. And I don't want to touch bcrypt. I don't think it's a good piece of advice because bcrypt truncates at 72 bytes. And for me, I don't like bcrypt, Farshad, because of that 72 byte trunk limit for what it can hash. So I think it's time to move. Wait a second. It used to. Let's go look at that because I actually edited that section. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm one of the leads, ASVS leads, and like Elar Lang and Josh Grossman do more work than me. They're amazing. So I'm one of like a team of leads. Let's go look at this though. Let's go look at authentication. Let's go look at the password security section. What are we looking at here? So let's go take a look at this. Let's go look at Argon. There it is. Argon 2 ID, scrypt, bcrypt, or PBKDF2. And if you're going to use bcrypt, yes, if you're going to use bcrypt, the work factor should be as large as the verification will allow, or a minimum of 10. And what's missing from this, let's do this. So 244, hang on. I'm going to do this for you right now. So I'll make it a little more surgical here. So get started. So it's 244. 244 recommends bcrypt, work factor 10, that's okay, but does not mention the 72 byte limit. So I'll fix that for you, Farshad. I want ASVS to be accurate, and I just noticed it didn't mention that, and it really should. So there you go. I'll work on it. I'll probably. Thanks, Jim. Look at it carefully. Let's go hit the cheat sheet together. So, and now that you see the cheat sheet and the ASVS location, please feel free to PR me. So what we're saying is, if you're going to use PBKDF2, yes, you could do 120,000 iterations, but only if you're using HMAC SHA-512. If you're going to use HMAC SHA-56 with PBKDF2, use 310 iterations, and for SHA-1, 720,000. It depends on what hashing algorithm you're using to get to that point of the proper threshold, the way we measure this. Dana, go take a look at 244 though, in the 5.0 branch. So if you look at 244 in the 5.0 branch, it says minimum of 10. There it is. Now, if you go back to ASVS 4.0 English authentication, and you go look at 244, it says 10 there as well. So where did we publish it at 13? The earlier publication, Dana, was 13, and we brought in Scooby from the Hashcat team to show us math as to why that was too extreme, that why a work factor 10 with bcrypt is completely okay with today's hardware and will be for several years. So this is, if we go to, I believe that's the 403 doc. So there's docs English, and this is 4.03 CVS. Yeah, there it is. Let me go to the official PDF actually. So this is JSON, X. I don't know where the PDF is. Let me go grab the docx. I'm gonna grab the docx, go to file. What could go wrong? I'm so deep in craziness here. Hang on. So what's going on here? PDF, update PDF. Is this it right here? I think so. Go to file. What the heck am I doing here? I'm sorry. So let me try a different path. OWASP ASVS. Yeah, I work on the project. Can't even get to the file. Hang on. ASVS. There's the main splash page. And there's the stable 4.03 release. Oh, great. Thank you for bringing me here. This is great. So is that it? Yeah, there's the PDF. There's a 4.0 PDF. Now, what am I doing wrong? Oh, yeah, download. Let me go download so I can pop it up in my viewer here. There we go. And now I want to see, there we go, 2.4.4. Yeah, the release is 10, Dana. There you go. So, no, Dana, Dana, I'm looking at 4.03 right now. It's a 10. We don't say 13 anywhere, but I digress. So take a look at the password storage cheat sheet. I love this topic. You're welcome to you're welcome to issue PRs to the 5.0 branch if you think any of this is wrong. I worked with a member of the Hashcat team to give you as specific suggestions of how to minimally configure these algorithms as I could find. And so I'm always happy to change any of this as we get new information, and we're trying our best to keep it in parity with ASVS. There's a couple there. There's the 4.0 branch, the 5.0 branch. You just change that 4.0 to a 5.0. There's NIST 863.3. That's the Digital Identity Guideline from the US government. A8, software and data integrity failures. This is about all the crazy scripts that you're running in your CICD pipeline. I like to use, when it comes to running some provider's crazy third-party script that I'm running on my server as root for CICD security, the rule of two. I'm going to check the download hash, and I'm going to check the GitHub repo to make sure it's still matching in both of those locations. I download it, check the hash, that's one, then check it against their public GitHub repo if they offer one, that's check two, right? Yeah, exactly. So let's look at A9, security, logging, and monitoring failures. The biggest thing I worry about here is how do I get developers to do complete logs, and how do I get operational teams to actually intake logs from applications properly? Because the goal of logging is to alert on security events and compliance, blah, blah, blah. But the real goal of logging is when I'm being hacked, I want to know about it. Yeah, compliance and whatever else. But you want to make sure your security operation team is actually intaking these logs, right, Mr. Cohen? You need standard security events so you know what is and is not normal. Nike Corporation, a sneaker company and clothing company in the US, they donated their vocabulary for security logging so to help inform developers and organizations of what security event they need to log. This is freaking brilliant of a donation. It's a great place to start. Get your developers, get your operation team together, agree on what should be logged from a security point of view, look for those events, and now you got some good logging going on from dev point of view. We want to make sure that our operation team is able to deduce what is and is not normal from a security perspective. And devs, you can definitely help. This will move up to number 1 in V5. Who knows? And agree on how it's structured so it can be sucked into a seam or sock. Oh, Dana, I agree. Look at wait till you see how beautiful this is. They really taught, this cheat sheet says, look, here's a standard core for all logging events, and now log like authentication login success after fail, plain success, login fail, and 100 other actions that O teams, the operation teams are looking for. Last but not least, we got server-side request forgery. Mark, it's been a special time sharing this presentation with you. All these little stupid jokes aside, I hope this was of value to you. Mark, of everyone here, Mr. Cohen, you are the most important of all the students here because this OWASP Top 10 presentation is dedicated to you, Mark. To you and only you. Everyone else, I am blind to them. I only see you, Mark. And let's talk about server-side request forgery. Let's do this, Mark. This was number 1 in the community survey, even though scanners don't find this. And the whole idea here is that we saw that for the first time, Capital One got popped by SSRF in a glorious fashion. So they were doing a server-side include that had a URL parameter that was itself a URL that the server acted upon. And the attacker took the Capital One domain, changed that URL to an AWS configuration file, which ironically is the configuration file of the WAF that got bypassed. Oops. If Morpheus was here, he would say, life, it seems, Mark Cohen, is not without a sense of irony. I agree with Morpheus. So this was an Amazon Web Service employee. Again, they changed a URL. It used to be like a news link or something innocent. They changed it to an AWS intranet location to the WAF cred file. It worked. That the cred file was embedded in the Capital One page that came back to the attacker. They grabbed those credentials and logged into AWS because they didn't have multi-factor because they weren't NIST Special Publication 863 compliant. Boo. And they were able to log in, hit the S3 bucket, and steal 100 million credit card applications. We also saw GitLab and Microsoft Exchange vulnerable to SSRF. This one freaked me out. It's like all of a sudden, now what account, Dana, is Microsoft Exchange logged in as? It's usually a domain controller that's running that system. So when they were able to SSRF Exchange, that would then force Exchange to make an inbound network request as a domain controller or other admin. Yeah, exactly, Mark. Mark Cohen is for the win, Mark. There's a new AWS metadata API version 2 that fixes that problem. And I agree, Mark, that was really wise of AWS to do that. But Capital One still had a server-side request forgery vulnerability. When they really should have what they should have done, they should have validated that little URL there. And it would have been easy to do, Mark. They could have just said, sorry, whoa. There we go. That's a schedule for someone else. So what do we got here? What do we got? What do we got here, Mark? We got if the URL starts with HTTPS capital1.com. And that would have fixed the problem. No, it wouldn't. You can bypass this. This would not have fixed the problem. We could have bypassed this with that markcohen.com, and we're bypassed. So you have to do this, /. Now that won't work anymore. Boom. Starts with that right there, and that would have fixed the problem to stop this, just to validate that URL properly. So charging on. What if you're doing this? I'm almost done, folks. What if you're taking this parameter and adding it to a URL that the server acts on for some end to your architecture? How do you guarantee that that variable cannot be hit with a path traversal? And the answer, I think, is do URL encoding. So if I'm building URLs that the server needs to go use to load a resource to another API, I just either path URL encode if it's a path fragment, or I do parameter URL encode if it's a parameter. Double encoding for the win. I'm one encode. I'm encoding, and double encoding is not gonna help you here. Double encoding is not gonna enable your path traversal. You can double and triple encode, and you're not gonna get to the .. You're not. And it may break the app data. It may break the app so it doesn't work anymore, but it's not gonna allow path traversal on the URL. Now, in a lot of SQL injection validation defenses, double encoding is one of the techniques you can use to bypass certain filters. But when I'm building a URL that the server acts on, the URL encoding is going to stop the path traversal. That's the only point I'm trying to make, Dana. And so to stop SSRF, you want to make sure your intranet APIs have great authentication and great access control. And you want to make sure that if you're taking a URL as a full parameter that the server acts upon, validate it strongly or get rid of that feature. It's called a server-side include, and we really don't need to do that kind of stuff anymore. There's better design patterns. If you're going to build a URL, use proper encoding of parameters and other techniques to make sure your URLs that you're constructing are safe. And you can use network controls with mesh services like Istio to put network controls around services so you limit where they can go, where they can do outbound requests. All journeys have a beginning, but all journeys, Mark, also have an end. So a few final notes. Look at the application security verification standard. I'm looking for PRs. I'm always trying to make it better. And the real volunteers that do the most work are Ilar Lang and Joshua Grossman. I help where I can. Daniel Cuthbert does as well. It's a wonderful standard. I really believe in the project a lot. There's the cheat sheet series, which I run, I'm one of the co-leads of that as well. Any questions, let me know. That's a living encyclopedia of secure coding knowledge. Last but not least, we got ZAP, a dependency check. which are some open source tools from the OWASP Foundation to help you test your own apps for security issues. And there's our testing guide for pen testers. And my folks, I am done. I hope this helped you in some way learn a little bit about security. I'll pass the PDF. In fact, let me get you that right now. I'm going to give you a link to the PDF right now in this talk.